The judge had not finished reading the first page of the verdict when senior partner Vivian Zhou turned toward me with a smile. It was the smile she used whenever she had already won. "Mr. Chun," she said softly, loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear, "perhaps you should explain why you submitted falsified evidence to this court." A murmur rolled through the gallery. My hands rested quietly on the table. Across from me, the opposing counsel looked almost relieved. Behind Vivian, two junior associates exchanged excited glances. Even our firm's managing partner, who had spent 3 years calling me the firm's most reliable litigator, avoided my eyes. The document displayed on the courtroom monitor was mine. My signature was at the bottom. The evidence number was mine. And according to Vivian, I had fabricated it. I looked at her. She looked back at me with perfect confidence. She had no idea. Not yet. The strange thing was that I had already watched this scene once. I had already heard the judge's voice, already seen Vivian's expression, already felt the humiliation burning through the courtroom. Because 3 months earlier, I had died. And when I opened my eyes again, I had been given one impossible gift. A second chance. This time, I knew exactly how everything would end. I simply had to decide what I was willing to change. 3 months before the hearing, I had stood on the rooftop of Zhou and Chun law offices with blood running from my forehead. Vivian had been standing behind me. She had not pushed me. That would have been easier to understand. Instead, she had simply watched. "You shouldn't have fought the partners," she said. Rain soaked her black suit. I remember laughing. "After everything I did for this firm? You misunderstood." Her voice was calm. "You did everything for yourself." Then she left. 20 minutes later, I fell. The last thing I remembered was the city lights twisting beneath me. The first thing I saw after that was the white ceiling of my apartment. I sat up violently. My chest hurt. My hand flew to my forehead. No blood. No wound. My phone was lying beside the pillow. The date on the screen made my breathing stop. April 17th, 3 months earlier. The morning after Vivian had asked me to hand over the evidence file for the biggest case our firm had ever handled. I stared at the date for almost a minute. Then my phone rang. "Daniel?" Vivian's voice. The same calmness. "Are you awake?" I couldn't answer. She continued, "Come to the office early. I want to discuss the Harcourt case." My fingers tightened around the phone. In my previous life, I had spent the next 3 months believing she was my mentor, my closest colleague, almost family. I had trusted her with everything, and she had used that trust to destroy me. I closed my eyes. The memory of my death returned. Then I smiled, not because I was happy, because for the first time, I understood something I had been too foolish to see before. I did not need revenge. I only needed to stop saving her. At 8:13 a.m., I walked into the firm's 42nd floor office. Nothing had changed. The polished marble, the glass walls, the enormous brass logo behind reception. Even the receptionist, Mia, looked exactly as I remembered. "Morning, Daniel." "Morning." She blinked. "You look strange." I slept well. That made her laugh. "That's impossible in this firm." I smiled and continued walking. My office was beside Vivian's. On my desk sat the Harcourt file. Thick, confidential, worth millions. And in my previous life, it had been the beginning of everything. Harcourt Biotech had been accused of concealing dangerous clinical trial results. Our client claimed the accusation was politically motivated. The key evidence was a chain of internal emails proving that one executive had deliberately altered the reporting system. I had found those emails myself. I had spent 6 weeks verifying them, and Vivian had taken them from my hands the moment I finished. "Excellent work," she had told me. Then she had asked me to trust her. I had. This time, I opened the file. The evidence was exactly where I remembered leaving it. I removed the original drive. Then I placed a duplicate on the desk. But before I closed the drawer, I made one small change. I attached a digital tracking certificate to the duplicate. Not visible, not obvious. Every access would create a record. Every transfer would leave a trail. Then I placed the original drive into a sealed envelope and locked it inside my personal safe. At 9:02, Vivian entered. She was 41, elegant, controlled, and terrifyingly intelligent. She put a coffee on my desk. Black. No sugar. I looked at it. You remembered. I remember everything about the people who work for me. In my previous life, those words had made me feel valued. Now, they sounded different. You wanted the hardcore evidence. She nodded. I need the full chain. I opened the drawer. For half a second, she looked at me. Then she reached for the duplicate. Thank you. I didn't stop her. She carried it back to her office. The moment her door closed, I leaned against my chair. My heart was beating faster than I wanted. Not from fear, from memory. I knew what she would do next. She would copy the evidence. She would present it to the senior partners as her own discovery. Then she would privately alter several metadata records, so the evidence appeared to have originated from my workstation. In my first life, I had never understood why the forensic trail pointed toward me. Now I knew. She had stolen my work. Then she had built my conviction around it. I opened my computer. A notification appeared. New encrypted access detected. I looked toward Vivian's office. The light beneath her door was still on. I smiled faintly. She had already taken the bait. At noon, the managing partner summoned me. Daniel. Mr. Luo stood beside the window. He was 62, severe, and usually impossible to read. You're handling Harcourt with Vivian? Yes. He turned. Vivian says you've done most of the technical work. She may have been generous. His eyebrows lifted. You don't sound pleased. I don't need credit. That answer surprised him. In my previous life, I would have argued. I would have explained every hour I had spent, every document I had found, every night I had stayed. This time, I didn't care. Mr. Luo studied me. Something happened? No. Then why do I feel like you're preparing to leave? I looked at him. Because I already had. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally, I had stopped belonging to the firm. I just want the case handled correctly. He nodded slowly. Good answer. When I returned to my office, Vivian was waiting. She stood beside my desk with her arms crossed. You've become quiet. Have I? You used to argue with me. Maybe I've matured. Her expression tightened. Don't play games with me. I wouldn't dare. She stared at me for several seconds. Then she smiled. You're still useful, Daniel. She picked up her handbag. Don't make me regret trusting you. After she left, I looked at the closed door. In my previous life, that sentence had made me desperate to prove my loyalty. This time, it made me laugh, because Vivian had made one mistake. She thought she was the only person who knew how to set a trap. She had no idea that I had already lived through hers. 3 days later, Vivian called an emergency meeting. Everyone in the litigation department gathered around the long conference table. The Harcourt case had suddenly become urgent. Vivian stood at the screen, clicking through documents. I've identified the strongest evidence in the case, she said. A junior associate whispered, already? Vivian smiled. Some people know where to look. I sat at the far end of the table. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. The screen displayed the internal emails I had discovered. My stomach tightened. There was something different. The file names had changed. The metadata had changed. And my name had been attached to the extraction history. Exactly as I remembered. Vivian finally turned toward me. Daniel, would you like to explain how these documents were obtained? The room became silent. I looked at the screen, then at her. I don't remember. Her eyes sharpened. You don't remember? No. She stepped closer. You were the one assigned to investigate the electronic records. I was. You accessed the server? Yes. You extracted these files? I paused. Yes. Several people exchanged glances. Vivian smiled. There it was. The first step. She wanted me to confirm the chain so that later, when the documents were challenged, I would become responsible for them. But she had forgotten something. The original evidence had never been on the server she thought I accessed. The files she stole were copies, and every copy carried the tracking certificate I had planted. I folded my hands. Anything else? Vivian seemed almost disappointed by my calmness. No. Then we're done. She stared at me. Yes. I stood. The meeting ended. As everyone filed out, Junior Associate Ethan caught up with me. Daniel. I stopped. He lowered his voice. Did you really extract those files? Yes. Then why does Vivian look nervous? I glanced toward the conference room. She was standing alone, staring at the screen. Maybe she's tired. Ethan frowned. You're hiding something. I smiled. So, is everyone. That evening, I stayed late. At 10:47 p.m., the office was almost empty. I heard footsteps outside my door. Vivian entered. She looked exhausted. Still working? Yes. She closed the door. For the first time since my return, she looked less like a senior partner and more like the woman I remembered from the final weeks of my previous life. Cold, focused, dangerously certain. You've been different. I didn't answer. She walked toward my desk. You don't ask questions anymore. Should I? You don't challenge me. I don't need to. Her eyes narrowed. What happened to you? I looked at her. Maybe nothing. She laughed softly. People don't change overnight. I almost said they do when they die. Instead, I said, people change when they realize they're replaceable. Something flickered across her face. Fear? No, not yet. Anger? You think you're indispensable? No. Then what do you think you are? I leaned back, responsible for my own choices. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she reached for the evidence folder. I'll take this. Go ahead. She froze. You don't want to review it? No. Why? Because you already have. Her fingers tightened around the folder. For the first time, I saw uncertainty. She left without another word. The door closed. I waited. Then my computer chimed. External transfer completed. I opened the access log. The duplicate evidence had been transferred to a private account registered under Vivian's personal credentials. I took a screenshot, then another. I saved everything to a secure archive outside the firm's network. I didn't report her. Not yet. A trap only worked if the person inside it believed they were free. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Ethan appeared at my door, holding a printed email. Daniel, you need to see this. I took it. It was from the firm's compliance department. Subject, preliminary inquiry regarding evidence handling. My eyes moved down the page. Someone had anonymously reported that evidence in the Harcourt case might have been manipulated. The report named no one, but the system logs attached to it showed the same external account Vivian had used. Ethan swallowed. I didn't send it. I know. Ow. Because if you had, you'd be shaking more. He stared at me. You knew this was coming. I said nothing. Ethan lowered his voice. Daniel, is Vivian doing something? I looked at the printed email. There was no reason to trust Ethan yet. In my previous life, he had testified against me. But I remembered something else. He had looked ashamed when he did it. And after my arrest, he had resigned. Maybe he hadn't betrayed me willingly. Maybe he had been afraid. I placed the paper on my desk. Don't ask questions you aren't ready to hear the answers to. He nodded slowly. Then he said something I hadn't expected. I'm ready now. I looked up. Ethan reached into his coat and placed a small USB drive on my desk. I found this in the old server room. My expression changed. Where? Behind a backup rack. He pushed it toward me. It's a recording. Of what? Vivian. My fingers stopped above the drive. What does she say? Ethan looked toward the hallway. She says your name. The room suddenly felt colder. I picked up the USB. For 3 months, I had believed I was the only person carrying memories of the betrayal. Now, someone else had placed a piece of the truth in my hand. I inserted the drive. A recording began. Vivian's voice filled the room. Once Daniel takes responsibility for the extraction, everything will fall into place. I stared at the screen. The recording continued. After the hearing, the firm will have no choice but to dismiss him. My pulse remained steady. Then came a second voice. A man's voice, one I recognized instantly. Mr. Luo, he asked. And if he refuses? Vivian laughed. He won't. I slowly leaned back in my chair. They had planned it together. Not just Vivian, not just a stolen file. The entire firm's leadership had been preparing to sacrifice me. And yet the recording wasn't finished. Vivian's voice became quieter. There's only one problem. Mr. Luo asked what? He doesn't behave like he used to. Silence. Then she whispered, I think Daniel knows. The recording ended. For several seconds, neither Ethan nor I moved. He looked at me. Daniel, I placed the USB drive on a desk. She doesn't know what I know. What do you know? I looked through the glass wall toward Vivian's office. She was standing inside, speaking confidently on the phone. 3 months ago, I had died because I trusted her. This time, I wouldn't expose her because I hated her. I would simply let her continue. Because the more confident she became, the more evidence she would create. I picked up the phone and called the court clerk. I'd like to amend our evidence preservation notice. Ethan stared at me. Why? I looked at the tracking records on my monitor. Because Vivian is about to make one final mistake. And somewhere across the office, as if she had heard me through the walls, Vivian suddenly looked up. Our eyes met. She smiled. I smiled back. Neither of us looked away. Vivian's smile disappeared first. It lasted less than a second. Then her expression returned to normal, polished and composed, as if nothing had happened. I watched her turn back to her phone. Ethan was still standing beside my desk. What final mistake? He asked. I closed the evidence log. I don't know yet. He stared at me. You just said she was about to make one. I said she would. That's not the same thing. No. I looked at the USB drive between us. That difference matters. Ethan remained silent. He had always been a nervous man. In my previous life, that nervousness had made him easy for Vivian to control. She had frightened him into signing statements he barely understood, then discarded him once the investigation was over. This time, I saw something different in him. Not weakness. Fear mixed with anger. That could become courage if given enough time. You should go home, I said. And you? I have work. He hesitated. Daniel. Yes. If this goes wrong. It won't. You sound very certain. I looked at him. I've already seen what happens when I lose. He didn't understand. That was fine. He didn't need to. At 7 the next morning, the firm's internal compliance officer entered my office. Her name was Clara Lynn. She was 36, quiet, precise, and notorious for never accepting an explanation without documents. She closed the door behind her. Daniel, I need to ask you some questions. About the Harcourt evidence? Yes. Then ask. She opened a folder. 3 copies of the same document were created from your workstation. I know. Her eyes lifted. You know, I monitor my own system. Why? Because I'm responsible for it. She studied me. 2 copies were later transferred to a private account. I know. And one of those transfers occurred after you left the office. I nodded. Clara leaned forward. Did you authorize it? No. Did you give anyone your credentials? No. Then who did? I looked directly at her. I think you already know. She didn't react. That was what I liked about Clara. She didn't pretend not to understand. Vivian, I didn't say that. But you thought it. I think evidence should speak for itself. Clara closed the folder. You're being careful. I'll learn to be. Her eyes narrowed slightly. From what? I didn't answer. She stood. I'm placing the Harcourt evidence under temporary preservation. Good. You agree? Absolutely. That surprised her. Most attorneys would fight that. Most attorneys have something to hide. And you don't. I smiled. I have plenty to hide. She stared at me. Then unexpectedly she smiled. Fair enough. She left. I waited until her footsteps disappeared. Then I opened the secure archive. The access log had changed. Someone had attempted to delete the transfer records. The attempt had failed. But the more interesting part was the timing. 3 minutes after Clara left my office. Someone had been monitoring our conversation. I looked toward the ceiling. The office security camera blinked once. I leaned back. Vivian was getting nervous. Good. By Friday, the entire litigation department had changed. People lowered their voices when I walked past. Associates stopped bringing documents directly to Vivian. Partners started asking questions. No one accused her. Not yet. But doubt had entered the room. And doubt was dangerous. Vivian responded exactly as I remembered. She became kinder. Too kind. She brought coffee to junior associates. She praised Ethan's research. She even stopped by my office one afternoon, carrying a box of pastries. Peace offering, she said. I looked at the box. What are we fighting about? She laughed. You've become impossible. Maybe. She put the box down. I've been thinking. That sounds dangerous. She smiled. I want you to take lead counsel at the Harcourt hearing. I looked at her. In my previous life, this offer had made me proud. I had accepted immediately. Then she had used my position against me. Why? You found the evidence. I thought you found it. Her smile froze. I presented it. That's different. Daniel. She leaned against the desk. You've always wanted recognition. Not anymore. That answer clearly bothered her. Then what do you want? I thought about it. 3 months ago, I would have said justice. Now I wanted something simpler. Freedom. I want my work to belong to me. Her expression hardened. You're becoming arrogant. Maybe. She picked up the box. Think about the hearing. I will. She walked toward the door, then stopped. By the way, the original evidence drive is missing. My heart didn't move. Is it? Yes. That's unfortunate. You don't seem concerned. I've learned not to panic over things I can replace. She turned around. Some things can't be replaced. I looked at her. I know. She left. Only after the door closed did I exhale. She had been testing me. She wanted to know whether I had kept the original. She hadn't found it, which meant her next move would be more aggressive. That evening, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. You think you're safe because you have records. I read the rest. Records can disappear. People could disappear too. There was no signature. I stared at the screen. For several seconds, I felt nothing. Then the memory returned. Rain. The rooftop. Vivian watching me fall. My fingers tightened around the mouse. Someone was escalating. But the message contained one mistake. It had been sent from a company account. Not Vivian's. Not Mr. Luo's. A dormant account belonging to the firm's former IT director. A man who had supposedly left the company 6 months ago. I forwarded the email to Clara. Then I printed it. I did not confront anyone. That was the hardest part. When you know someone is trying to destroy you, every instinct tells you to strike first. But striking first gives them something to react to. Silence gives them room to reveal themselves. So I waited. At 11:26 p.m., my phone rang. Ethan. Daniel. What's wrong? I found something else. His voice was barely above a whisper. Where are you? Basement archive. Stay there. I'm already leaving. No. I stood. Don't leave. A pause. Then Ethan said, Why? Because someone wants you to leave. The line went silent. Then I heard a metallic sound. A door closing. Ethan whispered, Someone is down here. The call ended. I grabbed my coat. The basement was almost completely dark. Only emergency lights illuminated the corridor. I found Ethan beside the old records room. His face was pale. Someone locked the archive door from outside. Are you hurt? No. What happened? I heard someone searching the cabinets. Did you see them? He shook his head. Then he pointed. One cabinet door stood open. Inside was an empty shelf. I recognized the label. Harcourt, Original Electronic Records. My breathing slowed. They were looking for the original drive. The one they believed was hidden somewhere in the firm's archives. They hadn't realized I had taken it home months ago. A sound came from the corridor. Footsteps. Ethan grabbed my sleeve. Daniel, don't move. The footsteps stopped outside. A shadow crossed beneath the door. Then someone spoke. Daniel Chun. I didn't answer. The handle moved. Once. Twice. Then stopped. A man's voice came through the door. You should have stayed quiet. I looked at Ethan. He was trembling. I wasn't. Because suddenly I understood. This wasn't about Vivian anymore. Someone was afraid of what the evidence would reveal. And whoever stood outside that door had just made the mistake I had been waiting for. They had turned suspicion into a criminal act. I reached into my pocket. My phone was recording. I pressed one button. The red indicator appeared. Then I spoke loudly enough for the person outside to hear. I'm recording this conversation. Silence. A second later, footsteps rushed away. Ethan stared at me. You planned that? No. Then why did you look so calm? I opened the archive door. Because now they have nowhere safe left to run. The police arrived 40 minutes later. Not because I called them. Clara had. She stood beside the basement elevator with 2 officers and an expression that suggested she had already reconstructed half the story. What happened? She asked. Ethan explained. I handed Clara my phone. She listened to the recording. When it ended, she looked at me. You understand this changes the situation. Yes. This is no longer an internal compliance matter. I know. One of the officers asked, Did you see the person? No. Can you identify the voice? I thought for a moment. Not confidently. That was true. The voice had sounded familiar. But familiarity wasn't proof. Clara nodded approvingly. You're not guessing. I don't guess when people's careers are involved. The officer looked at the damaged archive lock. Who had access? Clara answered before I could. Several people. Then she looked at me. Which is precisely the problem. The next morning, Vivian called me into her office. She was alone. No coffee. No smile. Why did you involve the police? Someone broke into a restricted archive. You could have handled it internally. Could I? Her eyes hardened. You're making this larger than it needs to be. I didn't make anything. You know what I mean? I sat across from her. You're worried. I don't get worried. You should try it sometime. Her jaw tightened. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she opened a drawer. Inside was a sealed envelope. She placed it on the desk. This is your resignation package. I looked at it. You're firing me? I'm giving you an opportunity to leave quietly. Why? Because the firm is becoming unstable. I almost laughed. You caused the instability. She stood. You have no proof. Not yet. Her eyes changed. There. That was the first time I saw genuine fear. Not because I had accused her. Because I had said not yet. She understood exactly what those words meant. I stood and pushed the envelope back. I won't resign. Her face became cold. Then you may regret staying. I've regretted staying before. She stared at me. I walked out. For the first time, I could feel the balance shifting. Not dramatically. Not yet. But enough. At noon, Mr. Luo summoned the senior partners. I wasn't invited. Neither was Ethan. But Clara was. 2 hours later, she came to my office. Someone attempted to access the compliance archive. Who? We don't know. Another failed attempt? Yes. She closed the door. Daniel, I need to ask you something off the record. Go ahead. Did you know the evidence would be stolen? I looked at her. The room became very quiet. No, it wasn't technically a lie. I hadn't known exactly when. I had only known it would happen. Clara studied my face. You're protecting something. Yes. Why? Because if I reveal everything too early, the people responsible will find a way to explain it. She nodded slowly. That sounds like experience. It is. Then tell me one thing. What? Is Vivian alone? I looked out through the glass wall. Vivian was standing across the office, talking to Mr. Luo. No. Clara followed my gaze. Who else? I don't know yet. That was the truth. The recording had proved Mr. Luo was involved in planning my downfall. But I still didn't know how deep it went. Clara picked up her folder. Then I'll find out. When she left, I realized something. An unexpected ally had appeared. Not because she trusted me, because she trusted evidence. That was enough. 3 days later, the Harcourt client demanded an emergency meeting. Vivian insisted on leading it. I wasn't invited. That should have concerned me. Instead, I smiled, because I knew what Vivian didn't. The client had received a copy of the evidence chain directly from Clara, and they had discovered a discrepancy. At 3:15 p.m., the meeting room door opened. Vivian emerged first. Her face was pale. Mr. Luo followed. Neither spoke. Behind him stood Harcourt's general counsel. He walked directly toward me. Mr. Chun. Yes. I need 5 minutes. Vivian turned sharply. There's no need. The man raised a hand. Senior partner Zhou, this concerns Mr. Chun. She stopped. I stood. What can I do for you? He lowered his voice. We have reason to believe the evidence presented to us was not originally discovered by Ms. Zhou. The hallway became silent. Vivian's face tightened. That's an internal misunderstanding. The general counsel looked at her. Then you won't object to an independent forensic review. Vivian didn't answer. I did. I welcome it. Her eyes snapped toward me. The general counsel nodded. Good. He handed me a sealed document. Your original preservation notice has been accepted. I took it. My fingers remained steady. Vivian looked at the envelope. Then at me. You did this. I shook my head. No. You knew. I suspected. You've been setting me up. I met her eyes. No. She stepped closer. Then what have you been doing? I lowered my voice. Stopping you from destroying me. She stared at me. For once, she had nothing to say. Then Mr. Luo spoke. Enough. His voice was sharp. Everyone back to work. The hallway slowly emptied. Vivian remained. So did I. She whispered. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly. If this investigation continues, the firm could collapse. Then perhaps it shouldn't have been built this way. Her eyes reddened. Not from sadness. From rage. You'll destroy everything. I shook my head. No. I walked past her. You're doing that yourself. That night, I went home earlier than usual. For the first time since returning to this life, I didn't open a case file. I made tea, sat beside the window, and allowed myself to breathe. The city below was quiet. 3 months ago, I had stood above those same streets and believed my career was my entire life. I had mistaken usefulness for belonging. I had mistaken loyalty for love. I had mistaken silence for peace. My phone vibrated. A message from Clara. Forensic report is ready. Then another. There is something you need to see before tomorrow's hearing. I opened the attached document. My eyes stopped on one line. Original evidence existed before Daniel Chen accessed the alleged source system. I read it twice, then a third time. My pulse quickened. That meant the evidence had not originated from my workstation, which meant the records Vivian had altered were fraudulent. But there was more. At the bottom of the report was a second finding. The metadata alteration was performed using an administrative credential. I stared at the credential name. Luo_admin. Mr. Luo, the managing partner. The man who had once praised me for being loyal. The man who had helped Vivian prepare my downfall. I leaned back. Tomorrow's hearing was no longer about stolen evidence. It was about whether the people who had built their careers on my silence could survive the truth. I closed the report. Then I smiled faintly. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for revenge. I was waiting for the truth to arrive. And tomorrow, everyone would hear it. The hearing room was full before I arrived. That alone told me how serious the situation had become. Reporters stood along the back wall. 2 representatives from Harcourt sat beside their general counsel. 3 senior partners from our firm occupied the first row. And Vivian was already at counsel table. She looked immaculate. Gray suit, pearl earrings, hair tied neatly behind her neck. If someone had seen her that morning, they would never have guessed that an independent forensic report had placed her at the center of an evidence manipulation investigation. She looked at me as I entered. Her expression was calm, but her fingers were gripping a pen hard enough for her knuckles to whiten. I sat down. Ethan leaned toward me. She knows. She should. He glanced toward the judge. Are you nervous? No. Why? I looked at Vivian. Because she isn't the one I need to convince. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. For the first 20 minutes, nothing happened. Procedural questions. Evidence preservation. Chain of custody. Then the judge looked toward Vivian. Ms. Zhou, you may proceed. Vivian stood. Her voice was smooth. Your Honor, the defense has attempted to manufacture doubt around evidence that was lawfully obtained by our firm. What's it here? She was doing exactly what she had done in my previous life. Control the room before anyone could question the facts. She displayed the evidence. Then the extraction records. Then my workstation logs. Every relevant file passed through Mr. Chen's system. She turned toward me. His credentials are attached to each transfer. A few people in the gallery whispered. The judge looked at me. Mr. Chen? I remained seated. My response will come later. Vivian smiled. She thought I was cornered. She didn't understand. I wasn't defending myself yet because I wanted her to finish speaking. Every sentence she added created another statement that could later be compared against the forensic record. She continued for 12 minutes. At the end, she looked confident. Your Honor, the evidence speaks clearly. The judge nodded. Mr. Chen, I stood. I carried no stack of papers. No dramatic folder. Only one thin envelope. Vivian's eyes narrowed. I approached the evidence screen. May I ask the court to display the original metadata? The opposing counsel objected. On what basis? Because the current metadata was altered. Vivian immediately stood. That allegation has no foundation. I turned toward her. Then you won't object to showing the original. Silence. The judge looked at Vivian. Counsel. Her lips parted, then closed. Proceed. The original metadata appeared. The courtroom became quiet. The file creation date was 3 days earlier than my supposed extraction. Vivian's face changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Chun explained. The evidence existed before I accessed the system. I pointed toward the screen. My workstation received a copy later. Vivian interrupted. That doesn't prove. I turned. You're right. Her expression changed again. I continued. It only proves the evidence didn't originate from me. The judge nodded. Then what does prove the alteration? I placed the envelope on the desk. An independent forensic report. Clara entered the witness area. Vivian stared at her. For the first time that morning, genuine fear appeared in her eyes. Clara swore the oath. The opposing counsel approached her. Ms. Lynn, are you claiming the evidence was manipulated? I am saying the metadata was altered. By whom? Clara looked at the report. The administrative credential used for the alteration belonged to the firm's managing partner. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Mr. Luo stood abruptly. That is impossible. Clara didn't react. The system records indicate otherwise. Vivian looked toward him. He looked at her. Their eyes met for only a second. But that second was enough. Everyone saw it. They were no longer protecting each other. They were calculating who would fall first. During the recess, Vivian cornered me in the corridor. You planned this. I looked at her. No. You knew Clara would testify. I hoped she would. You manipulated her. No. She stepped closer. You've been collecting evidence against me from the beginning. I lowered my voice. I've been collecting evidence for the case. You expect me to believe that? You don't have to. She stared at me. Then she said something I hadn't expected. I never wanted you dead. The hallway seemed to become colder. I looked at her. What? She swallowed. The rooftop. I said nothing. She looked away. I didn't push you. I know. You don't. Her voice cracked. I didn't know you would fall. My jaw tightened. You were there. Yes. You watched. I was angry. You left. She closed her eyes. I thought you would come down. I looked at her. There were tears in her eyes now. For one brief moment, I saw the woman beneath the ambition. Not innocent. Not forgiven. Just human. And somehow that made everything harder. Vivian, she looked at me. You didn't need to push me. Her face went pale. You only needed to keep watching. I walked away. She didn't follow. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Harcourt's general counsel asked to speak with me privately. He closed the conference room door. There's another issue. What issue? He placed a photograph on the table. It showed a storage facility. What is this? A private evidence archive. I looked closer. I don't understand. Harcourt maintained physical backups of sensitive documents. He pointed toward the building. One of our executives ordered those backups destroyed 6 months ago. Why? We don't know. He slid another photograph toward me. The executive was visible entering the facility. I recognized him. So did Vivian. It was the man whose name appeared repeatedly in the stolen emails. The same man who had been accused of altering clinical records. But there was something else. A woman stood beside him. Vivian. I stared at the photograph. She was there. Apparently. Why wasn't this disclosed earlier? Because we didn't know what she was doing. I looked at the timestamp. 6 months ago. Before the case had officially begun. Before I had discovered the evidence. Before Vivian had supposedly become interested in Harcourt. The implications were enormous. She hadn't merely stolen my evidence. She had been involved with the client long before assigning me the investigation. Perhaps the evidence had never been intended to help the case. Perhaps it had been intended to control the outcome. I looked at the general counsel. Do you have access logs? Yes. Then preserve everything. He nodded. That's what we wanted you to say. When I returned to the courtroom, Vivian was gone. So was Mr. Luo. Ethan came toward me. Where did they go? I don't know. He lowered his voice. Daniel, Clara found another transfer. When? This morning. Where? An overseas account. I stopped. Whose? We don't know. Can you trace it? Clara is trying. I looked toward the empty counsel table. Something felt wrong. Vivian wasn't the type to run. She fought until she had no ground left. If she had disappeared now, she wasn't escaping. She was moving. I turned to Ethan. Find out where she went. He nodded. I didn't chase her. Instead, I returned to my seat. Because I remembered something from my previous life. The night before my career collapsed, Vivian had vanished for 6 hours. When she returned, she had already moved the money. Back then, I hadn't known why. Now I did. She was preparing a second exit. And if she followed the same pattern, the next place she would go was the one location she believed no one would search. Her family's private legal archive. That night, I stood outside my apartment with the keys in my hand. I almost laughed. I had spent weeks believing I was building a trap for Vivian. But the truth was different. I had been collecting pieces, piece by piece, and now someone else was connecting them. The betrayal was larger than I had imagined. The danger was larger too. My phone rang. Clara. Daniel. What happened? We found the overseas account. Whose? A pause. Vivian's. I closed my eyes. Where is she? We don't know. Then what did you find? Clara's voice became quieter. The account received one transfer today. How much? Enough to disappear. I looked out over the city. Then Clara said, there's one more thing. What? The transfer came from an account belonging to Mr. Luo. I stood very still. They're not running separately. No, they're moving together. Yes. I ended the call. For the first time since my return, I felt something close to fear. Not for myself. For the people who were still standing between them and exposure. Ethan, Clara, the junior associates. Anyone who knew too much. I opened my safe. Inside was the original evidence drive. Beside it was the USB recording. And beneath both was a document I had never shown anyone. My own death investigation. I had obtained it in my previous life after my fall. The report had been buried. But now I knew why. Someone had altered the security footage from the rooftop. Someone had erased the final 12 minutes. I had always assumed it was Vivian. Now I wasn't sure. I placed the report on the table. For the first time, the mystery surrounding my death felt more important than the case that had caused it. And if the same people were behind both, then my second chance had never been only about saving my career. It was about discovering who had really wanted me gone. The next morning, Clara didn't come to work. Neither did Ethan. At first, I assumed they were both investigating the overseas transfer. Then I received a message from an unknown number. Stop digging. I stared at it. A second message arrived. You already died once. Don't make the same mistake. My blood went cold. Not because of the threat. Because of the wording. No one in the firm knew I had died. No one. I slowly put the phone down. Someone knew. Someone knew exactly what had happened on the rooftop. I called Clara. No answer. I called Ethan. His phone was switched off. I grabbed my coat. Then stopped. Running directly to them was exactly what someone wanted. So I opened the firm's internal access system instead. Clara's employee account had been accessed at 6:12 a.m. from outside the office. Ethan's account had been accessed at 6:15, both from the same location. A private conference center 3 blocks from a courthouse. I went there alone. The conference center lobby was almost empty. I walked to the front desk. I'm looking for 2 people. The receptionist checked the booking system. Names? Clara Lynn. Ethan Park. She hesitated, then looked at me. They're in the basement meeting room. Who booked it? She checked. Vivian Zhou. My chest tightened. I thanked her, then walked downstairs. The basement corridor was quiet. Too quiet. I heard voices behind a closed door. Clara. Then Ethan. Then another voice. Mr. Luo. I stopped. The door wasn't fully closed. I listened. You should have taken the settlement, Mr. Luo said. Clara answered, I'm not taking anything. You don't understand what you're interfering with. I understand perfectly. You think Daniel will protect you? Silence. Then Ethan spoke. He doesn't need to. Mr. Luo laughed. You both think this is about him. I leaned closer. It isn't. My heart stopped. Mr. Luo continued. Daniel was never the target. The room went silent. Clara asked, then who was? Mr. Luo didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost tired. The client. I frowned. That made no sense. He continued. Harcourt had developed a treatment that could have destroyed several companies if released publicly. Clara said, so you manipulated the trial results? We contained the information. And Daniel? He found the files. Ethan asked, so you framed him? We needed someone credible enough to carry the blame. My fingers curled into a fist. Mr. Luo continued. Vivian volunteered. I closed my eyes. For years, I had believed Vivian betrayed me because she wanted my position. But the truth was worse. She had used me as a shield. I pushed the door open. Everyone turned. Clara's face changed. Ethan stood immediately. Mr. Luo looked at me. There was no surprise in his eyes. You finally came. I stepped inside. What happened on the rooftop? Vivian wasn't there. Mr. Luo smiled faintly. You remember. I remember falling. You don't remember why. No. He sat back. Then perhaps you should ask Vivian. Where is she? Gone. Where? I don't know. I stared at him. You're lying. He smiled. You always were too certain of yourself. I stepped closer. You destroyed my career. No. You framed me. Yes. You watched me fall. His expression changed. Only slightly. I watched you make a choice. What choice? You were going to expose everything. I stared at him. What did Vivian do? Mr. Luo looked away. She was supposed to convince you to stop. She failed. Yes. And then... He said nothing. I understood. She followed me. His silence was answer enough. Did she push me? No. I looked at him. Did she stop anyone from helping? His eyes lowered. That was enough. I stepped back. The truth hurt differently than I expected. Not because Vivian had pushed me, because she had stood there and watched. Again, Clara walked toward me. Daniel, there's something else. She handed me a folder. We found the original rooftop security archive. My fingers tightened. Where? An old backup server. I opened it. The footage began. The rooftop. Rain. Me. Vivian. Then another person entered the frame. My breathing stopped. It was Mr. Luo. He approached us. The audio was damaged, but several words were clear. You don't understand what you're holding. Then my own voice. I'm going to the authorities. Mr. Luo stepped toward me. Vivian grabbed his arm. No. The footage continued. I backed away. My heels slipped. I fell. Vivian reached out. For 1 second, her hand touched mine. Then she let go. The video ended. Nobody spoke. I stared at the screen. That 1 second had lived inside my nightmares. But now I knew. Vivian hadn't pushed me. She had chosen not to save me. There was a difference. A terrible one, but a difference. I closed the folder. Mr. Luo stood. Now you understand. I looked at him. No. He frowned. I understand that you both made choices. I walked toward the door. And now you'll live with them. He laughed. You think evidence will save you? I stopped. No. I looked back. People will. Then I left. That evening, Clara released the evidence to the court. Not publicly. Not dramatically. Just through the proper legal channel. That was enough. The investigation expanded. Harcourt's executives were subpoenaed. The firm's financial records were frozen. Mr. Luo's administrative access was revoked. And Vivian's private accounts were placed under investigation. She was still missing. But her absence no longer mattered. She had spent years believing she could control the story by controlling the evidence. Now the evidence existed in too many places. Too many hands. Too many copies. She couldn't steal all of it. She couldn't silence everyone. And she couldn't erase what had already been seen. At midnight, Ethan called. Daniel. Yes. I found her. My eyes opened. Where? Airport. Is she leaving? No. Then what? She came back. I stood. What? Ethan's voice was quiet. She asked for you. I looked out the window. For the first time, I understood something. Vivian wasn't coming back to fight. She was coming back to face me. And perhaps, for the first time in our long history, neither of us would be able to hide behind a title, a courtroom, or a stolen piece of evidence. The truth was already waiting. Vivian was sitting alone in the airport's private waiting lounge when I found her. She had removed her pearl earrings. Her hair was loose. For the first time since I had known her, she looked tired. Not defeated, just tired. She raised her eyes when I entered. I knew you'd come. I stopped several feet away. You asked for me. Yes. What? She looked toward the window. Beyond the glass, airplanes moved slowly through the rain. I wanted to see whether you hated me. I said nothing. She gave a faint smile. You always were difficult to read. I learned from you. Her smile disappeared. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her handbag and placed a small envelope on the table. I want you to have this. I didn't touch it. What is it? Something I should have given you 3 months ago. I stared at the envelope. You have 5 minutes. She nodded. Fair. I sat across from her. She pushed the envelope toward me. Inside was a handwritten statement. I read the first line. I, Vivian Zhou, acknowledge that the evidence submitted under Daniel Chen's name was manipulated. I looked up. You're confessing. Yes. Why? Because there is nowhere left to run. That isn't an answer. She looked down at her hands. No. Her voice became quieter. It's the truth. I read the statement again. You could have said this earlier. I was afraid. I almost laughed. You? Yes. She looked directly at me. You think I don't get afraid because I'm always composed? She swallowed. I've been afraid for years. Of Mr. Luo? Yes. Of losing your position? Yes. Of me? She hesitated. Yes. That answer surprised me. Why? Because you were the only person in the firm who believed rules mattered more than power. She smiled bitterly. And people like me don't survive around people like you. I closed the statement. You chose to destroy me anyway. I know. Why? Her eyes became wet. Because I thought I had already gone too far to turn back. That sentence stayed between us. I understood it. Not as forgiveness. As explanation. There was a difference. You knew Mr. Luo was manipulating Harcourt's records? Yes. You knew about the rooftop? Yes. You knew he intended to frame me? She nodded. And you helped him? Her eyes closed. Yes. I looked away. The airport lounge suddenly felt too small. You should testify. I will. You should turn over every document. I will. And you should tell the truth about the money. She nodded again. All of it. I stood. She looked at me. That's it. What did you expect? I don't know. An apology? She shook her head. I don't deserve one from you. No. I looked at her. You don't. I turned toward the door. Daniel. I stopped. She whispered. I really am sorry. I didn't turn around. I'm sorry too. She seemed confused. For what? For believing you were someone you weren't. Then I walked away. The next morning, Vivian surrendered herself to the firm's investigators. Her confession triggered everything. She handed over encrypted communications, financial records, private messages, meeting schedules, and one file that changed the entire investigation. A payment ledger. Mr. Luo had been paying several executives to suppress Harcourt's clinical data. Vivian had received payments too, but her name wasn't the largest on the list. At the bottom was another name, a government regulatory consultant. That expanded the case beyond our firm. Investigators arrived before lunch. The building that had once felt untouchable became strangely quiet. Partners were questioned. Computers were seized. Conference rooms became temporary interview rooms. Employees whispered in hallways. No one laughed anymore. I stood at my office window and watched two investigators carry boxes out of Mr. Luo's office. Ethan appeared beside me. Does it feel good? I looked at him. What? Watching all of this? I thought about it. No. He seemed surprised. Really? No. Why? Because this isn't victory. He nodded slowly. Then what is it? Consequences. By afternoon, Mr. Luo was escorted out. He stopped when he saw me. Two investigators stood behind him. He looked older than he had that morning. You think you've won. I didn't answer. You'll learn something, Daniel. He leaned closer. People don't change. I looked at him. They do. He laughed. You haven't. Maybe not. I paused. But I stopped protecting you. That silenced him. He was led away. I watched until the elevator doors closed. Then I returned to my office. For the first time in months, I closed the door without feeling like I needed to listen for footsteps. The forensic hearing resumed 2 weeks later. This time, Vivian sat in the witness box. She had no legal team from our firm, no partner beside her, no junior associates, no polished presentation, just a microphone and a glass of water. The judge asked, Ms. Zhou, did you alter the evidence? Yes. Did you do so alone? No. Was Mr. Chen involved? She looked toward me. No. The opposing counsel asked, did Mr. Chen know about the manipulation? No. Did he authorize any alteration? No. Did he knowingly submit false evidence? No. Her voice remained steady. The attorney paused. Why did you frame him? Vivian looked down. Because I believed he would be easier to sacrifice than me. A murmur spread through the courtroom. The judge called for silence. The attorney continued. Did Mr. Chen ever threaten you? No. Did he ever steal evidence? No. Did he ever falsify a record? No. Then why did you accuse him? Vivian looked toward me again. Because I knew he would try to do the right thing. The courtroom became completely silent. She continued. And I knew people would believe the person who appeared confident over the person who was telling the truth. I lowered my eyes. That was the first honest thing she had ever said about me. After the hearing, Claire met me outside. "You okay?" "Yes." "You don't look relieved." "I don't think relief looks like anything." She smiled. "Fair." Ethan joined us. "I've got good news." "What?" "Harcourt asked you to represent them independently." I shook my head. "No." Both of them stared at me. "Why not?" Ethan asked. "Because I'm done working for people who think loyalty means ownership." Clara nodded. "That sounds like you." I smiled. "Is that good?" "Very." For the first time, I realized something. I had spent my second chance trying to prevent the same ending. But perhaps that had never been the real purpose. Maybe I had been given another life, not to defeat Vivian, not to destroy Mr. Luo, not even to save my career. Maybe I'd been given another chance to become someone who could walk away. And that was harder than revenge. 3 months later, the court issued its final findings. The evidence against Mr. Luo was overwhelming. He was charged with obstruction, evidence manipulation, financial misconduct, and conspiracy. Several Harcourt executives faced separate investigations. Vivian accepted responsibility for her role. She lost her license to practice law pending further proceedings. Her career was over. But she never tried to blame me. That mattered. Not because it changed what she had done. It didn't. But because, at the end, she finally stopped trying to control the story. One evening, I received a letter from her. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it. There were only 3 pages. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't ask me to visit. She simply wrote about the first year we had worked together. The night I had stayed until 2 in the morning to help a junior associate prepare for a hearing. The time I had defended her during a partner dispute. The way I had always checked the evidence twice. Then she wrote, "I used to think your integrity made you weak because it made you predictable. I understand now that I was wrong." I folded the letter. There was one final sentence. "You didn't defeat me. I defeated the person I became." I put the letter in a drawer. Not as a keepsake. Not as forgiveness. As a reminder. Some endings did not need hatred. 6 months after the investigation began, the firm dissolved. Zhou and Shen law offices became part of another practice under new management. My name disappeared from the old brass sign. I stood outside the building on my final day. Ethan stood beside me. "You really aren't staying?" "No. You could be partner somewhere else." "Maybe. What will you do?" I looked at the city. "I don't know yet." He smiled. "That sounds unlike you. I used to think not knowing was failure. And now I think it might be freedom." He nodded. We stood there quietly. Then Clara arrived carrying 2 coffees. She handed one to me. Black. I looked at it. "You remembered." She smiled. "I remember everything." For a moment, I almost laughed. The phrase used to belong to Vivian. Now it didn't. I took the coffee. "Thank you." Clara looked at the building. "Ready?" I nodded. "Yes." We walked away. I didn't look back. 2 months later, I opened a small legal practice with Ethan. No enormous glass tower. No marble lobby. No senior partners who treated junior lawyers like disposable tools. Just 4 offices, 1 conference room, and a receptionist who complained about the printer every morning. It was imperfect. I loved it. Our first major case came from a factory worker who had been fired after reporting a safety violation. He couldn't afford the legal fees. Ethan wanted to take the case for free. I agreed. After the meeting, Ethan looked at me. "Are we really doing this?" "Yes." "We could charge him later." "No." "Why?" I smiled. "Because sometimes helping someone is simply helping them." He laughed. "You've changed." I looked through the office window. Maybe. Outside, the afternoon rain had begun. For a moment, I remembered the rooftop, the fall, the cold air, Vivian's hand, the moment she let go. Then the memory faded. It no longer controlled me. That was the real victory. A year after the hearing, I received another unexpected visitor. Vivian. She stood outside my office. Her clothes were simple. No designer suit. No expensive watch. No authority. Just a woman carrying a folder. I invited her inside. She sat across from me. "I won't stay long." "That's fine." She placed the folder on my desk. "Everything I know about the remaining Harcourt accounts." I opened it. "These are originals." "Yes." "Why give them to me?" Because I finally understand something. She looked down. You never needed me to lose. I didn't answer. You only needed me to stop lying. I closed the folder. Thank you. She stood. At the door, she paused. Daniel. Yes. I hope you have a good life. I looked at her. I already do. She nodded. Then she left. I watched the door close. There was no triumph, no satisfaction, just silence. And strangely, the silence felt peaceful. That evening, Ethan stayed late. He found me sitting alone in the conference room. You okay? Yes. You're smiling. I was thinking, dangerous. I laughed, then looked at the evidence folder Vivian had left. What? Nothing. Ethan pulled out a chair. You know, I used to think you were fearless. I wasn't. Really, I was terrified. Then why didn't you show it? I consider the question. Because fear doesn't decide what you do. He nodded. That's a good answer. No. I looked toward the window. It's an answer I learned too late. That night, I walked home instead of taking a taxi. The city was bright. People filled the sidewalks. A couple argued outside a restaurant. A child chased a balloon. A bus hissed to a stop. Ordinary life. Beautifully ordinary. I stopped at a crosswalk. The light turned red. I waited. And for some reason, I remember the last time I had stood beneath a red light in my previous life. I had been rushing. Always rushing. To win. To prove. To protect. To be indispensable. I had thought life was something I had to hold together with both hands. Now I understood. Some things were meant to fall. Some people were meant to leave. Some doors were meant to close. And sometimes the strongest thing a person could do was simply stop standing in front of a door that had already shut. The light turned green. I crossed. Behind me, the city continued moving. Ahead of me, there was no courtroom, no investigation, no Vivian, no Mr. Luo, no trap, just tomorrow. And for the first time in either life, tomorrow belonged entirely to me. The first time I realized I was actually healing, I was standing in front of a whiteboard arguing with Ethan about a comma. It changes the meaning, he said. It doesn't. It absolutely does. I took the marker from his hand. Read it again. He crossed his arms. I read the sentence. He read it again. Then he sighed. You're right. I know. You're becoming unbearable. I smiled. That's growth. He threw a paper ball at me. I caught it. The office was quiet except for the rain tapping against the windows. It had been nearly a year since the old firm collapsed. Nearly a year since the hearing. Nearly a year since Vivian had walked out of my office for the last time. And I had discovered something I never expected. Peace was not dramatic. It didn't arrive with music. There was no moment when the sky suddenly became brighter and every old wound disappeared. Peace was a Monday morning when nobody lied to me. It was an associate asking a question without fearing humiliation. It was a client leaving our office with their dignity intact. It was being able to close my laptop at 6 without wondering who was plotting against me. It was sleeping through the night. I hadn't understood how valuable that was until I lost it. Daniel, Ethan's voice pulled me back. What? You're doing again. Doing what? Staring into space. I looked at him. Sorry. He shook his head. You don't have to apologize for thinking. That sentence stayed with me. At the old firm, every pause had been interpreted as weakness. Every hesitation had been used against someone. Here, silence was simply silence. I looked around the small office. 4 desks, 2 shelves of legal books, a dying plant Ethan refused to replace, a coffee machine that made terrible coffee. It was nothing compared with the 42nd floor. Yet I had never felt richer. That afternoon, a young woman named May arrived at our office. She was 27. Her hands trembled as she sat across from me. I don't know if you can help. Tell me what happened. My employer fired me. What? She hesitated. Because I reported a safety problem. Ethan and I exchanged a glance. She placed a folder on the table. I told them the equipment was defective. I opened the folder. Inspection records, internal emails, photographs, payroll documents. Everything was there. But there was one problem. Her employer had already accused her of stealing confidential information. They're threatening to sue me. What did you take? Nothing. Are you sure? She nodded. I photographed the equipment with my own phone. That's all. I studied the photographs, then looked at her. Why didn't you go to another firm? She gave a nervous laugh. I called 3, and one wanted a retainer I couldn't afford. The second said it wasn't worth the time. The third told me to apologize to my employer. Her voice cracked. I don't want an apology. I closed the folder. What do you want? I want them to stop putting people in danger. Ethan looked at me. I knew what he was thinking. We couldn't make much money from this case. Maybe none, but that wasn't the question. I leaned back. Then we'll take it. May stared at me. Really? Yes. How much? Nothing for the initial work. Her eyes widened. Why? I smiled. Because you came here asking for help, not a miracle. She lowered her head. A tear fell onto the table. Thank you. I nodded. And when she left, Ethan looked at me. You know we're going to spend weeks on this. Yes. Possibly months. I know. And probably won't get paid. I know. He sighed. You've become difficult to argue with. I smiled. That's because I'm right. He laughed. But after he turned away, I looked at May's empty chair. For the first time, I understood what I had actually wanted from law. Not prestige. Not partnership. Not applause. I wanted to make sure that when someone stood alone in a room against people with more money and more power, they didn't have to believe they were already defeated. Maybe that was why my second life had begun with a stolen piece of evidence. Maybe I had needed to lose everything I thought mattered before I could understand what did. 2 weeks into May's case, we discovered something unexpected. Her employer wasn't merely hiding defective equipment. They had been altering inspection records for 3 years. Ethan stared at the documents. This is bigger than we thought. Yes. How big? Big enough that they can't bury it quietly. He looked at me. Do we notify regulators? Yes. Before filing? After we secure the evidence. He smiled. Now you're sounding like the old Daniel. I shook my head. No. Why not? The old Daniel would have done everything himself. I handed him half the files. This Daniel has people he trusts. He looked at the documents. Then at me. That's probably the biggest change. I didn't answer. Because he was right. Trust had once been the thing that destroyed me. Now I was learning that the answer wasn't to stop trusting people. It was to stop trusting blindly. The case attracted attention. A local newspaper published an investigation. Then another. The company denied everything. Their lawyers accused May of fabricating documents. I watched the press conference from our office. The company's spokesperson stood beneath bright lights. Our records are accurate, he said. I turned off the television. Ethan frowned. You're not angry? No. Why? Because they're talking. That's all. People who are telling the truth don't always need to talk first. He smiled. You really like silence. I've learned its value. That evening, the regulators issued a preservation order. The company couldn't destroy anything. For the first time, I felt something familiar. The same satisfaction I had once felt watching Vivian's trap close. But it was different now. There was no pleasure in someone's downfall. Only relief that the truth had somewhere to stand. 3 months later, May won her case. The company settled. The safety equipment was replaced. Several executives resigned. May received compensation and, more importantly, a formal correction to her employment record. She came to our office carrying a small paper bag. I brought something. Ethan opened it. Inside were 2 homemade cakes. He looked delighted. You made these? Yes. He immediately took one. I laughed. You didn't even ask what flavor. It's cake. May laughed for the first time since we had met. The sound filled the office. After she left, Ethan leaned back in his chair. Worth it. I looked at the empty doorway. Yes. He nodded. So what's next? I looked around. The small office. The old books. The terrible coffee. The people who trusted us. I smiled. More of this. 6 months later, we hired our first full-time associate. His name was Ryan. He was 24, brilliant, nervous, and completely incapable of pretending he understood something when he didn't. I liked him immediately. On his first day, he stood beside my desk holding a file. Mr. Chun, Daniel, sorry, it's fine. He handed me the file. I think I made a mistake. What kind? I cited the wrong regulation. Then fix it. He blinked. That's it. Yes. You're not angry? Why would I be? Senior lawyers usually get angry. I looked at him. Then perhaps you found a wrong senior lawyer. He smiled. Thank you. He turned to leave. Ryan. Yes. If you don't know something, ask. He nodded. And if someone tells you that asking makes you weak? Ryan waited. Don't believe them. He smiled. Okay. After he left, Ethan appeared behind me. You realize you're becoming a mentor. I frowned. Don't say things like that. What? It makes me sound old. You are old. I threw a pen at him. He laughed. The office felt alive. Not perfect. Not grand. Alive. That evening, Clara visited. She had left compliance work after the investigation and joined an independent legal ethics organization. She still looked exactly the same. Quiet. Observant. Impossible to fool. She placed a folder on my desk. You're being nominated. For what? An ethics award. I stared at her. No. She laughed. I knew you'd say that. Take my name off. Too late. I don't want an award. I know. Then why did you nominate me? I didn't. Who did? She smiled. May. I fell silent. Clara sat down. You don't have to accept. Good. But you should consider why she nominated you. I looked at her. She doesn't need to repay me. She didn't. Clara leaned back. She wrote that you were the first lawyer who listened to her without asking what she could pay. I looked down. That isn't special. It is. I shook my head. It's supposed to be normal. Exactly. She stood. That's why they noticed. After she left, I sat alone for a long time. The award didn't matter, but her words did. Because for years, I had thought being good meant being exceptional. Working harder, staying later, sacrificing more. Now I understood something simpler. Sometimes being good meant refusing to become cruel simply because cruelty was profitable. That night, I opened the old drawer where I had kept Vivian's letter. I hadn't read it since the day she gave it to me. I took it out. The paper had softened at the folds. I read the first page, then the second, then the final sentence. You didn't defeat me. I defeated the person I became. I folded the letter again. For a long time, I had believed closure meant receiving an apology. It didn't. Closure meant no longer needing one. I placed the letter back. Then I opened another drawer. Inside was the old case file from the hardcore investigation. The original evidence drive was still there. I had kept it because I couldn't decide what to do with it. Now I knew. I called Clara. She answered after 3 rings. Daniel, I want to transfer the original evidence to the legal archive. She was silent. Are you sure? Yes. Once it's there, you won't control access. That's the point. You're finally letting go. I smiled. Yes. The following morning, I brought the drive to the archive. The archivist asked me to sign the transfer form. My hand paused above the paper. 1 year ago, evidence had meant survival. A file could destroy me. A file could save me. A file could determine whether someone believed I was innocent. Now, it was simply a record. A piece of history. I signed. The archivist took the drive. That's everything? Yes. He placed it in the secure cabinet. The door closed. I stood there for another moment, then walked away. I expected to feel empty. Instead, I felt lighter. A few days later, Ryan made his first serious mistake. He submitted a filing with an incorrect deadline. The opposing counsel noticed. They sent us a letter threatening sanctions. Ryan came into my office pale. I ruined it. No, I did. No, I should quit. I looked at him. Sit down. He did. Do you know why you're afraid? Because I made a mistake. No. I pushed the letter toward him. Because you think making a mistake means you are a mistake. His eyes lowered. I remember myself. The old firm. The fear. The need to be perfect. I softened my voice. Fix the filing. But the deadline. We'll request an extension. What if they refuse? Then we'll deal with that. What if the judge sanctions us? Then we'll deal with that. He looked at me. And if everything goes wrong? I smiled. Then tomorrow still comes. He stared at me for a moment, then nodded. Okay. He left. I watched him go. I realized that perhaps healing wasn't only about becoming peaceful myself. It was about making sure the people around me didn't have to learn the same painful lessons alone. That weekend, I returned to the rooftop of my apartment building. I hadn't been there since my second life began. The city stretched beneath me. For a moment, my body remembered the old fear. The rain, the edge, the fall. I gripped the railing. Then I let go. Not because I was reckless, because I no longer needed to prove I wasn't afraid. I stood there until the rain stopped. My phone vibrated. A message from Ethan. Dinner? I typed back, "Sure." Then another message arrived from Clara. "Don't forget the awards ceremony next week." I smiled. Then came one from Ryan. "I fixed the filing. Extension granted." I laughed. 3 messages. 3 people. A life that had not existed before. I looked at the city again. The first time I stood on a rooftop, I thought my life was ending. This time, I understood it was beginning. Not because the past had disappeared. It hadn't. Not because the people who betrayed me had become good. They hadn't. Not because I had forgotten what happened. I never would. I had simply stopped carrying their choices as if they were mine. The rainwater slid from the railing beneath my hand. I turned away from the edge and went downstairs. The award ceremony was held in a hotel ballroom overlooking the river. I almost didn't attend. Ethan threatened to drag me there. Ryan volunteered to take photographs. Clara simply sent me a message. "If you don't come, I'll tell everyone you were afraid of a microphone." So I went. When my name was announced, I walked onto the stage expecting to feel embarrassed. Instead, I felt strangely calm. The presenter handed me the award. "Daniel Chun," she said, "for outstanding commitment to legal ethics and public service." The applause rose around me. I looked into the crowd. Ethan was clapping too loudly. Ryan was taking photographs with both hands. Clara stood beside him, smiling. May was there too. She gave me a small wave. I looked at the award. A year ago, something like this would have meant everything. Now it meant something different. Not proof that I had won. Proof that I had finally stopped measuring my life by other people's approval. I stepped toward the microphone. I used to think integrity meant never making mistakes. The room became quiet. I was wrong. I looked toward my colleagues. Integrity is what you do after you realize you made one. I paused. It is choosing the truth when lying would be easier. It is admitting when you don't know. It is refusing to destroy another person simply because you have the power to do so. My fingers tightened around the award. And sometimes, integrity means walking away from a place you spent years trying to belong to. The applause came slowly, then louder. I smiled. "Thank you." I stepped off the stage. Ethan hugged me before I could sit down. "You survived." I survived a 5-minute speech. Same thing. I laughed. For once, I didn't feel the need to correct him. The next morning, an envelope arrived at the office. There was no return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. "Vivian." I placed it beside my keyboard. I didn't open it for several minutes. Then I did. Her letter was shorter this time. "Daniel, the court accepted my plea agreement yesterday. I will serve the sentence imposed by the court and surrender the remaining assets connected to the investigation. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to visit. I only wanted to tell you something I should have told you years ago. When you fell, I could have saved you." I stopped reading. The room seemed to become very quiet. I continued. "I reached for you. Then I let go. That was my choice. No one made it for me. I spent a year telling myself I was afraid, that Mr. Luo forced me, that I had no choice. Those things were partly true, but they were not enough to excuse what I did. I chose ambition over a human life. You were right when you said I destroyed myself. I hope you live without needing to remember me. Vivian." I folded the letter. There was no anger inside me. That surprised me more than anything. I had imagined this moment countless times. In every version, I had felt something: rage, satisfaction, vindication. But now, nothing. Not emptiness. Release. I placed the letter in a folder. Then I locked it away. That afternoon, Ethan came into my office. "You got something?" "Yes." "Bad." "No." "Good." "I don't know." He sat down. "You don't have to tell me." "I know." We sat quietly. Then he asked, "Do you ever think about what happened?" "Sometimes." "Does it still hurt?" I looked out the window. "Yes." He waited. "But it doesn't control me anymore." He nodded. "That sounds like healing." I smiled. "Maybe." 3 weeks later, we received an invitation. The old hardcore case was being formally closed. The final judgment had cleared my name completely. The court record stated that I had been the victim of deliberate evidence manipulation. I didn't need the judgment, but I went anyway. Not for vindication, for closure. The courtroom looked smaller than I remembered. I stood where I had once been accused. The same wooden benches, the same judge, the same screen. but everything felt different. The clerk read the final findings. Then the judge looked at me. Mr. Chun. Yes, Your Honor. The court recognizes that you acted appropriately throughout the investigation. I nodded. Thank you. The judge paused. You have no further obligations regarding this matter. Those words hit harder than I expected. No further obligations. For years, I had lived as if I owed the past something. An explanation. A victory. A punishment. Now, there was nothing left to pay. I walked out of the courtroom. Clara waited outside. So what? How does it feel? I looked back at the courtroom doors. Finished. She smiled. Good. We walked toward the courthouse steps. The sun was bright. People moved around us. Nobody cared who I was. And for the first time, I was grateful for that. That evening, I returned home early. I opened a balcony door. Cool air entered the room. I stood outside with a cup of tea. The city lights stretched endlessly. My phone rang. Ethan, you home? Yes. Come downstairs. Why? Just come. I frowned. When I reached the lobby, Ethan, Ryan, Clara, and May were standing there. Ethan held a cake. I stared at it. What is this? Anniversary? Of what? Ryan grinned. The day our firm opened. I had forgotten. Ethan hadn't. May held a small paper bag. I brought dinner. Clara raised a bottle of sparkling water. No speeches. I laughed. Good. We sat together in the small office that had become a second home. There was too much food. The cake was crooked. Ryan told a terrible joke. Ethan laughed before the punchline. Clara pretended not to. May smiled more than she had when I first met her. I looked around the room. These people had entered my life after everything had fallen apart. Not because they needed something from me. Not because I was powerful. Not because I could give them a partnership. They were simply there. And that was enough. Later, after everyone left, I remained alone. The office was quiet. I turned off the lights one by one. Then I stopped at the conference room. The whiteboard still carried Ryan's notes from that morning. A case number. 3 questions. 1 crooked arrow. I smiled. I erased nothing. I left it there. Tomorrow, someone would come in and continue. Life would continue. Cases would come. People would make mistakes. Some would disappoint me. Some would surprise me. I would probably make mistakes too. But I no longer needed a perfect life. I only needed an honest one. 5 years later, people occasionally asked me about the Harcourt case. Usually, they had read about it online. Sometimes a young lawyer would recognize my name. Were you really framed by your own senior partner? Yes. What did you do? I always gave the same answer. I stopped helping her. They expected something more dramatic. A secret weapon. A brilliant courtroom speech. A devastating revenge plan. But there wasn't one. The truth was simpler. She made choices. I stopped protecting her from their consequences. That was all. One afternoon, a young associate asked me the question I've been asked many times. Did you ever forgive her? I looked at him. Why do you think forgiveness was necessary? He frowned. Isn't that how you move on? No. I placed a file on the desk. Moving on means understanding that someone else's choices no longer determine yours. He thought about that, then nodded. That's difficult. Yes. Did you learn it easily? I laughed. No. Our firm had grown. Not into another glass tower. I refused that. We had 12 lawyers now. A proper library. A larger conference room. And, after Ethan finally surrendered, a functioning coffee machine. Ryan had become a capable attorney. May eventually joined our compliance team. Clara remained an independent advisor, though she still visited every few weeks and criticized our document systems. Life had become ordinary. That was the greatest miracle. There were no traps, no secret recordings, no whispered threats, no footsteps outside my door at midnight. Just work, people, mistakes, laughter, rain, sunlight. Ordinary things I had once considered insignificant. On a quiet Friday evening, I received one final letter. This time, the envelope came from the correctional facility where Vivian was serving her sentence. I opened it. Daniel, I heard your firm has grown. I'm glad. Do you remember what you told me at the airport? You said you were sorry for believing I was someone I wasn't. I thought about that for a long time. You shouldn't have been sorry. The person you believed I was existed once. I destroyed her myself. I stopped, then continued. I don't know whether I will ever become that person again. Maybe I shouldn't, but I'm learning to live without blaming anyone else for what I chose. I wanted you to know that, not because I need anything from you, because once you told me that people could change, I didn't believe you. Now I do. I folded the letter. I didn't write back, not because I was angry, because there was nothing left to say. Some stories ended with reconciliation. Ours ended with understanding. That was enough. Years earlier, I had believed the most painful moment of my life was the fall from that rooftop. I had been wrong. The fall itself lasted seconds. What hurt was everything I believed before it. I believed loyalty guaranteed loyalty. I believed hard work guaranteed recognition. I believed if I protected someone long enough, they would protect me. I believed being needed meant being valued. I believed silence was weakness. Then I died, and somehow I was given another life. Not a perfect one, not a life without pain, a life with another chance to make different choices. The first time, when Vivian took my evidence, I fought to prove it was mine. The second time, I let her take it. Not because I wanted her destroyed, because I finally understood that truth did not need me to shout. It needed me to preserve it. That difference changed everything. One winter morning, I stood before the window of my office. Snow was falling. Ryan entered carrying 2 files. Daniel? Yes. The new associate wants to ask you something. Send him in. Ryan hesitated. He's nervous. I smiled. Tell him not to be. He asked if you'll be angry. Why would I? Because he made a mistake. I looked at Ryan. Tell him mistakes are allowed. Ryan nodded, then stopped at the door. You know, you really are a different person now. I smiled. No. He looked confused. I became the person I should have been all along. He nodded, then left. I turned back toward the window. Snow continued falling over the city. For a moment, I thought about the first morning of my second life. The shock, the anger, the evidence drive, Vivian's smile, the trap, the courtroom, the rooftop. All of it felt distant now. Not erased, just finished. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Lunch? I replied. I'm paying. His answer came immediately. Then I'm ordering everything. I laughed. The sound surprised me. It was the same laugh I had lost years ago. Not bitter, not forced, just happy. I put on my coat. Before leaving, I looked around my office. The shelves were full. The desks were occupied. The lights were warm. People were talking in the hallway. Someone was laughing. Someone was arguing about a case. Someone was asking for help. Life was happening. I turned off the desk lamp. Then I walked toward the door. I stopped for 1 second. Behind me was everything I had survived. Ahead of me was everything I had built. I didn't need to choose between them. The past could remain the past. The future could remain unwritten. And for the first time, I understood what a second chance truly meant. It wasn't the chance to punish the people who had hurt you. It wasn't even the chance to change what had happened. It was the chance to become someone who no longer needed the past to change. I opened the door. Ethan shouted from the hallway. Daniel, we're going to be late. I know, you're always late. I was thinking, you always think too much. I smiled, then stopped waiting for me. He laughed. I followed him down the hallway. The office doors closed behind us. The city waited outside, and I walked into it without looking back. Not because I had forgotten, because I had finally learned how to live.